Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Sarah Yisrayl, Yahaqob, and I'd like to be as a priest starting very, very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services.
May I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Yisrayl, Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present to you the sons and daughters of Yisrayl now entering the sanctuary. I'd now like to present one of the sons of Yisrayl, Nabayah Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech is Satan Has Deceived the Whole World. Satan has been deceiving the world since the beginning. If you can turn over to Genesis 3, verse 1 through 5. And it says, Now the serpent was more subtle and crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh had made, and said to the woman, Has Yahweh indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yahweh has said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, or you will die. And the serpent said to the woman, You will not surely die, for he knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as gods, Elohim, knowing righteousness and evil. And we know that Satan is still deceiving the world today. And Satan uses the Vatican and the churches to help deceive the people. If you can turn over to Revelations 17, it's on page 982. Revelation 17 and verse 4 through 5. And it says, And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abomination and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her head was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, Mother of the Harlots, and the abomination of the earth. And then if you look down to verse 7 through 9, it says, And the Malach said to me, Why are you astonished? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast which carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast you saw and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will wonder, whose name was not written in the book of life from the foundation of the earth, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the man that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And if you read side note K, it says, This woman is without a teacher except for Lucifer. She practices both evil and righteousness, passes her own laws with trial and failure, and changes Yahweh's laws. For her people. The word Vatican means dividing serpent. One of the biggest deceptions they did was removing the name Yahweh and Yahshua and replacing them with the names of gods. If you can turn over to Yirmiah, it's on page 592. Yirmiah 23, verse 26 and 27. And it says, How long will this be in the heart of the prophets who prophesy lies? Yes, they are prophets of deceit in their own mind, who devise, plan, and scheme to cause my people to forget my name through their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, just as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal Lord. You can see how the King James Version calls the book of Yahweh the book of the Lord. It's because Satan has deceived them. The Vatican also removed the Book of Yahweh for about 2,000 years. If you can turn over to Isaiah 34. Isaiah 34, verse 16. And it says, "Search out the book of Yahweh and read. Not one of these will be neglected. For it is written, Yahweh is their shepherd, they shall not want. For his mouth has commanded, and his spirit has gathered them." The churches say they have salvation. The preachers of these false religions say they are the one sent. But the true one sent is Yisrayl Hawkins. If you can turn over to page 821, it's Yahaqob 6, verse 29. And it says, "Yeshua answered and said to them, This is the work of Yahweh, that you believe in him whom he has sent." The house of Yahweh has been established and is being built by Yisrayl Hawkins. He is building the house of Yahweh by teaching the laws of Yahweh and training others to also teach the laws of Yahweh. So they can come out of the deception of Satan. If you can turn over to Isaiah 42, verse 1. "Behold, my servant, who I uphold, my elect one, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit in him, who will bring forth judgment to the Gentiles." Also, turn the page to Isaiah 44, verse 1 through 2 and 5. "Yet hear, O Yahaqob, and my servant Yisrael, whom I have chosen. This is what Yahweh says, who made you and formed you from the womb, who will help you. Do not be afraid, Yahaqob, my servant, and Yeshurun, beloved Yisrael, whom I have appointed." And verse 5 says, "One will say, I belong to Yahweh, and call himself with the name of Yahaqob, and the other will subscribe with his hand and write, I belong to Yahweh, and surname himself with the name of Yisrael." So don't be deceived by Satan. The only way to have salvation is by keeping the laws of Yahweh as taught by the one sent Yisrayl Hawkins. And I recommend you to read the book Unveiling Satan, Her True Identity Revealed, for in-depth information on who Satan is. And with that, if you all please stand, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
And now for the speaker this morning, the great Deacon Yahaqob Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Today, my title is The Rewards of Becoming Acceptable to Yahweh. Now, for my first scripture, let's turn to Genesis. Genesis 4. Now, this was where Cain and Abel brought forth an offering to Yahweh. Now, remember, this was an offering of people. Cain was a teacher, a preacher, and like in the world today, they have preachers of sin. Like Cain, he taught sin. He was a preacher of sin. Now, they both brought forth an offering. And Cain's was not accepted because he taught sin. Now, if you remember what sin is, hold your place in Genesis and let's go to Yahaqob. First Yahaqob. Found on page 965. First Yahaqob 3:4. It says here, "Whoever commits sin transgresses also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law." Now, that word transgress in the student's handbook, it actually means to break. And I think I have it here. I can show you. If you can see that right there, that's the word transgress, and it means to break. to break a law or to overstep, to break a law. All right, so that word transgress, sin is to break the laws of Yahweh. Now let's go back to Genesis 4:1, found on page 3. It says, "Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. And she said, I have brought forth a man with the help of Yahweh." Verse 2, "Then she bore again, and this time his brother Abel was born. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep." Now if you look at that side note K right there, it says that is a teacher of righteousness. He taught righteousness. Now if you don't know what righteousness is, let's go to Deuteronomy 6, found on page 153. Deuteronomy 6, verse 25. It says, "And it will be our righteousness if we observe to do all this law before Yahweh our Father as He has commanded us." So you see that righteousness is keeping Yahweh's law, the keeping of Yahweh's laws. Let's go back to Genesis. It says, "But Cain was a tiller of the ground." All right, that is a servant of the gods. And it says, "And on one of Yahweh's Sabbaths it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to Yahweh. And Abel, besides bringing his offering of the fruit of the ground, also brought a sacrifice of the firstlings and of his flock, and of their fat. And Yahweh honored Abel and his offerings." All right, they were found acceptable to Yahweh. Remember, because Abel taught righteousness. So his offering was righteous. In verse 5 it says, "But he did not honor Cain and his offering, and Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell." All right, so you see that Yahweh did not accept the offering of sin. Now, the word acceptable from the Longman Dictionary means worth receiving and welcome. Now, in the interlinear, this was brought out before. You can see there, to be accepted is number 7613. All right, I have it enlarged here. All right, and number 7613, it's 7613, and you see that from NASA. All right, and if you remember the work on NASA, there was what NASA did from 15,000 light years away. All right, you can see Pastor right there. All right, praise Yahweh. And this is what NASA did. If you go to Daniel 12, I just want to show this one point here. Daniel 12, verse 3, found on page 684. It says, "And those who are wise will shine as the brightness of heaven, and those who turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever." All right? So those who are righteous will shine forever and ever. And this is what's shining in the stars right now. All right? This is from NASA. Now, it goes to 5375. All right, and there you see to accept and to be accepted. Now, 2102 is, it's actually from Hebrews. It's the word accepted from Hebrews. And you see there, 2102 in the Greek, it means acceptably in a well-pleasing way. And it says C 2101. 2101 is well-pleasing, acceptable, well-pleasing, acceptable, well-pleasing, and it says especially to God, well-pleasing down there. Then it comes from this word here, and it means fully agreeable or acceptable. Now that word, the Greek word there goes to 2095, and it means well done. Great, rightly also used as an exclamation. But you see there, done, great, well, and well done. Now, if you don't know where that is, let's go to Luke 19, found on page 805. Found on page 805, Luke 19, and we'll start at verse 17. Now this is where, let's start at verse 16. It says, "So the first came, saying, Ruler, your mina has gained 10 minas. And he said to him, Well done, faithful servant, but because you are trustworthy over very little, you will have authority over 10 cities. Now, let's also go to Matthew 25, found on page 754. Matthew 25, and we'll start at verse 20. Now, this is the parable of the talents. It says, Then he who had received 5 talents came forward and brought 5 other talents, saying, Ruler, you have handed me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained 5 other talents above those. His ruler said to him, Well done, righteous and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your ruler. Now, verse 22, it says, He also who had received 2 talents came forward and said, Ruler, you handed me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents above those. His ruler said to him, Well done, righteous and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you a ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your ruler. All right, so you see there, if you do righteousness, which is the keeping of Yahweh's laws, you will be found acceptable to Yahweh, and you will find the joy of Yeshua's ruler, which is the kingdom of Yahweh. All right, so that's all the time I have. If y'all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to present to you the great Kohan Yahodah Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. While we're talking here, turn to Isaiah chapter 43, verses 3 and 4 on page 557. Now, for those of you who've been here since, say, 1996 or 1997, you should have this in your notes, but nonetheless, we need to go over it again because there's been some new information that's come upon it. It's on page 557, Isaiah 43, verses 3 and 4. You see, over the years that have come to pass, we have seen and heard many things about the witness Israel having to be hidden so that he would not be killed before he began and completed the mission for Yahweh that he was given, being the one sent. This is no fantasy based upon a lie. Yahweh himself promised this. Now, this is Isaiah 43, verses 3 and 4. For I am Yahweh your Father, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I gave Egypt for your ransom, Ethiopia and Saba for your price. Because you were precious in my sight, you have been honorable, and I have loved you, so I will give men for you and people for your life. We're going to have to move relatively rapidly. I thought I would tell Pastor this morning that we would set this clock up here. Now, I'm going to have to get finished in about 9:45 or so. But I thought, well, we'll set the clock for Los Angeles time. And Pacific time is 2 hours earlier, which means I can go, till 9:45, which means I got 2 hours to go. But all seriousness, the word Egypt that is written in Isaiah 43 verse 3 is translated from the Hebrew word Mitzrayim. This word is listed on pages 857, 1208, and 1211 and 1212 of a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by Julius First, which shows that word means an adversary, an enemy, or an oppressor. The word ransom that is written in Isaiah 43 verse 3 is translated from the Hebrew word kafar. This word is listed on pages 308 and 309 of the Student's Hebrew and Chaldee Dictionary by Alexander Harkavy, which shows this word means to avert, to put off misfortune, which you are not able to avert. Your covenant with death is annulled. In other words, you're not going to get it. That should be a very positive thing. Nobody wants to get killed, surely. A Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament of Julius First, page 689, shows the Hebrew word kafar written in Isaiah 43 verse 3 means ransom. Ransom price by that which is to be punished is protected. The word Ethiopia that is written in Isaiah 43 verse 3 is translated from the Hebrew word kabash. This word is listed on, the Student's Hebrew and Chaldee Dictionary by Alexander Harkavy, page 284, shows this word means heathen, unbelievers, fallaways. Word sabah that is written in Isaiah 43 verse 3 is translated from the Hebrew word sabah. This word is listed on page 478 of the Student's Hebrew and Chaldee Dictionary by Alexander Harkavy, which shows this word means they will be consumed as stubble, fully dry. The word price that is written in Isaiah 43 verse 3 and the word for that is written twice in Isaiah 43 verse 4 are translated from the Hebrew word takatik. Mouth's a little dry. This word is listed on page 763 of the Student's Hebrew and Chaldee Dictionary by Alexander Harkavy. He is Hebrew. He was a rabbi and scholar, which shows this word means in place of, instead of, for evil, for righteous. So what Isaiah 43 verses 3 and 4 is saying in the 11th edition when it comes out is, for I am Yahweh your Father, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I protected you from your covenant punishment with death by giving Satan, the heathen, and those who will burn in the lake of fire to that death in exchange for you. Now this was given in Passover 1997. I remember that because I was the one that did it. What I'm trying to say, that was the day that we all learned Pastor was not going to be assassinated. Because you are precious in my sight, have you made honorable, and I have loved you, so I will give men in exchange for you and people in exchange for your life. Yahweh promised that he would see to it that the witness Israel would not be killed. But why did Yahweh promise that witness Israel would not be killed? How does that apply to us? And believe it or not, the answer is rather exciting. I was going to say startling, but I don't think it's going to make anybody nervous. First, the witness Israel was called out to do a certain task. Turn over a couple of chapters to Isaiah chapter 9, verses 46. Isaiah chapter 46, verses 9 through 13, on page 560 in your book of Yahweh. Isaiah 46, 9 through 13, page 560. Remember the former things of old, for I am Yahweh and there is none else. I am Yahweh and there is none like me. Praise Yahweh for that. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times those things which are not yet done, saying, my counsel will stand, and I will fulfill all my plan. Don't. If you have to, get a big piece of paper and put the word PLAN all over it, because this is important. We have a big scripture about this coming up in a few minutes. Call it an eagle from the east, and one who executes my plan from a far country. Yes, I have spoken, I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed, I will also do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-hearted, and who are far from righteousness. Everybody out there who isn't here, they better start listening or they're going to wish they had. I bring near my righteousness. It will not be far off, and my salvation will not tarry. And I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. The word declaring that is written in Isaiah 46:10 is translated from the Hebrew word magid. This word is listed on page 871 of Volume 2 of the Hebrew Aramaic English Dictionary by Marcus Jastrow, which shows this word means to tell, to testify. Or as one guy says, to tell it like it is. The word eagle that is written in Isaiah 46 verse 11 is translated from the Hebrew word oit. This word is listed on page 1062 of Volume 2 of the Hebrew Aramaic English Dictionary by Marcus Jastrow, which shows this word means style, stylus, pencil, a writing instrument. Sound familiar? I hope so. The word from in the prepositional phrase from the east that is written in Isaiah chapter 46:11 is translated from the Hebrew preposition ma. This word is listed on page 826 of a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by Julius First, which shows this means motion from, away from. The word in that is written in the prepositional phrase in Zion that is written in Isaiah 46:13 is translated from the Hebrew preposition and adverb ba. It's showed by the Hebrew letter bet. This word is listed on page 56 of the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davidson, which shows this word means through. The word Zion that is written in Isaiah 46:13 is the traditional translation of the Hebrew word Zion. This word is listed on pages 641 and 642 and 644 of the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davidson, which shows this word is a form of the original Hebrew word zu. Zadi wa he, which means command, commandment, precept. The Hebrew Aramaic English Dictionary by Marcus Jastrow, Volume 1, page 824, shows this word is also a biblical Hebrew word, often written in the form matzo, or in Yiddish mitzvah. And it means 613 commands, positive and prohibitive. If thou doest them as they are commanded, they are deeds of merit or righteousness. The word for in the phrase for Yisrayl that is written in Isaiah 46:13 is translated from the Hebrew word la, just the Hebrew letter lamet. This word is listed on page 399 of the Analytical in Chaldee Lexicon of Benjamin Davidson, which shows this word means in the sight of. So what Isaiah 46 verses 9 through 13 is saying is, remember the former things of old, for I am Yahweh and there is none else. I am Yahweh and there is none like me. I have told you from the end of the end. I have told you of the end from the beginning, and from ancient times those things which are not yet done, saying, my counsel will stand and I will fulfill all my plan. I have called one from the west to write, the one who executes my plan from a far country. Yes, I have spoken, and I will also bring it so to pass. I have purpose, and I also will do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-hearted who are far from righteousness. I bring near my righteousness. It will not be far off, and my salvation will not tarry. For those who keep all of my laws will bring my salvation, overseen by Israel, whom I will glorify. Yahweh promised to witness Israel that he would not be killed before he had finished that task that Yahweh has given him. To keep this promise, Yahweh did some really marvelous things. Now turn over to Proverbs chapter 28, verse 12 on page 514. Page 514 in your book of Yahweh. Proverbs 28:12. When the righteous rejoice in power, there is great glory. When the wicked rise up, men hide themselves. The word men that is written in Proverbs 28:12 is translated from the Hebrew word Adam. This word is listed on page 12 of the Lexicon and Veteris Testamenti Libros by Coelho and Baumgartner, which shows this word means a single man. The word hide themselves that are written in Proverbs 28:12 are translated from the Hebrew word Yachafash. This word is listed on pages 270 and 310 of the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davidson, which shows this means singular and means to disguise or hide. So what Proverbs 28 verse 12 is saying is this: when the righteous rejoice in power, there is great glory. When the wicked rise up, one man will be hidden. The witness Israel would be hidden so that he would not be killed. But how he was hidden is a real proof of how smart Yahweh really is, and much more. Remember that Isaiah 43 verses 3 through 4 says Israel's covenant with death would be annulled. This is how Yahweh did it. For years, Pastor believed he was going to be assassinated in Jerusalem. He wasn't. He hasn't been killed over here either. Or are we looking at a ghost every time he preaches? He never says boo. And I hope nobody boos him in here. The question is, why hasn't he been killed? How was this done? The answer is found in the book of Yochanan, chapter 1, verses 44 and 46, 45 and 46, on page 815. It's pretty simple. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, we have found him of whom Moshe in the law and the prophets wrote of, Yeshua of Nazareth, the one son of Yosef. Now, if you'll notice on this pulpit, it talks about 2 men sent. Who are they? Okay, now you see how this applies to Israel. Then Nathanael said to him, can any righteous thing come out of Nazareth? Philip said to him, come and see. The people of Nazareth in Galilee were considered a bunch of religious nuts and a joke, which is why Nathanael scoffed at Yeshua until he met him. What you need to know is the psalmist prophesied that what Nathanael said about Yeshua and his followers would be exactly what would be said about the house of Yahweh and pastor in these last days. Remember, Nathanael scoffed and made fun of Yeshua. Now, he did convert later. Turn to Psalm 119, 141, and 486. I'm just using a properly translated scripture this time. We are small and despised, but we do not forget your precepts. If you can't get to the page in time, just write it in your notes. Psalm 119, 141. This very thing that came to pass with Nathanael concerning Yeshua and was prophesied in Psalm 119, 141 is how Yahweh let it be so that Israel was not killed. When Israel was visiting Jerusalem as an American from Oklahoma, everyone there either did not know him, didn't care, or they thought that because he was an American from Oklahoma, he, like Yeshua, who was from a place called Galilee, was nothing more than a joke, and hence not even the radicals and militants, including the Jewish hardliners, Mossad, Palestinian Hamas, Sunni Al-Qaeda or their forebears, or the Shiite Hezbollah, thought anything of Israel other than he was a joke and a nutcase to be ridiculed, shunned, and ignored. I can personally tell you that I was the same mind when I first met Israel. I realized that by the standards of the world, the worldly standards, I will ask you to understand that by the standards of the world, my education dwarfed that of his. Now, that doesn't mean I run around and think he's a nut or a dummy today, but still, that's how I looked at it then. But that was 40 years ago. But like the Apostle Shaul, when I came to reverence Yahweh at his house, I needed to put away the very judgmental, bigoted, and childish things like that. The Apostle Shaul did the same thing. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11, and 806. Now, all this is about pastor and somebody else we'll talk about behind him. Don't worry, it won't be behind anybody's back. You're seeing it face to face. 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, and I understood as a child. I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. Now, I'm not saying I'm equal to the Apostle Shaul, but like him, I realized, thinking that I'm smarter than Israel Hawkins, I'm better education than this, I had to throw all that out, and I did. Gladly. If I had not done that, I don't think Yahweh would have let me see any of the things I've seen over these last 40 years. But the point of the matter is simply that I did this one thing. Now, I'm not saying these things to promote me, but to point out what I'm trying to say about Pastor and the house of Yahweh, which we're coming to in a minute. Because for the last 40 years, I have done my best to use what I was given in those schools of higher learning, not for myself, but to give it all to you. But it was in this way that Yahweh allowed the people of the world in Israel, and it's going on over here too, to protect Israel. Because once you leave these gates, you know as well as I do, everybody thinks he's a nutcase, he's a joke, he's a religious fanatic, and a loser. It seems only Yahweh's house knows better. But it's not only about Israel. It is also about the house of Yahweh. A priest in Yahweh's house I know quite well. He came here from Austria. I won't say his name. He might be too embarrassed. He's fluent in German, quite well in English, but he was out in the old sanctuary over there one time barbecuing a brisket on one of the barbecue pits we used to have around the camp. This lady walked across the street and said, Are you sacrificing something to your Yahweh or whatever? And he said, No, I'm making a brisket. I'm hungry. And she said, Well, I'll tell you what. This is the most godforsaken place I've ever seen. And the priest says, and may it stay that way. That is a true story. I'm not making a joke here. That is a true story. The point of the matter is, what you're going to understand, how Pastor was hidden by Yahweh, by everybody thinking out in the world, thinking he's a nutcase, a fool, a religious nut, an okie, and a dummy, and whatever. The same thing applies to the house of Yahweh. Turn to Amos chapter 3, verses 6 and 7 on page 696 in your book of Yahweh, page 696. Verse 6. Will a trumpet be blown in the city and the people not be afraid? Will iniquity fostered by religious impostors be taking place in the city and Yahweh not have done a righteous work there, or have a righteous work done there? Most assuredly, Father Yahweh will have no work other than the work that he has prophesied in advance by his servants the prophets. The word iniquity that is written in Amos 3 verse 6 is translated from the Hebrew word roah. This word is listed on page 1262 of volume 2 of the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, but Kohler and Baumgartner, which shows this word means shepherd, to lead, to rule. A crime, to violate a law that forbids something or an action, or to fail or to refuse to do something a law commands one to do. The word work that is written in Amos 3 verse 7 is translated from the Hebrew word sudu. Samak wa, the late wa. The Student's Hebrew and Chaldee Dictionary to the Old Testament by Alexander Harkavy, pages 57, 248, and 482 show this word means house, to found, to establish the house of Yahweh, and secret. The great secret of Yahweh is the name of this particular series of teachings that I've been called to give. This is part 1 today. secret. Letting Scripture interpret Scripture, Isaiah 28 verse 10 and 13 teaches as teachings, in other words, letting Scripture itself interpret Scripture. Turn to Yochanan 1 verse 1 on page 814. Now, we're going to talk about this verse because we're going to show how it interprets Amos 3 verses 6 and 7. Yochanan 1 verse 1 on page 814. Yochanan 1 verse 1. In the beginning was the plan of Yahweh, and the plan was with Yahweh, and the plan was Yahweh. By the way, don't lose your place on Amos 3 verses 6 and 7. Hold your place there. Doesn't somebody say that a lot? I think so. But hold your place there and stay with Yochanan 1:1 for a minute or two. In the beginning was the plan of Yahweh, and the plan was with Yahweh, and the plan was Yahweh's. The word plan that is written several times in Yochanan 1 verse 1 is translated from the Hebrew word dabar. This word is listed on page 278 of volume 1 of the Hebrew Aramaic English Dictionary by Marcus Jastrow, which shows this word not only means plan, but also it means at Abil. The word Yahweh's, the possessive there that is written in Yochanan 1 verse 1 is translated from the Hebrew word Yahweh. This word is listed on page 338 of volume 1 of the Hebrew Aramaic English Dictionary by Marcus Jastrow, which shows this word means to come to pass. What Yochanan 1 verse 1 says in the Hebrew is, it was not originally written in Greek, which is why I shun the Greek totally. In the beginning at Abil was the plan of Yahweh. That should be obvious. And this plan at Abil was with Yahweh, and this plan will come to pass at Abil. So what Amos 3 verses 6 and 7 is saying is, will a trumpet be blown in the city? Back to Amos 3 verses 6 and 7. And the people not be afraid? Will the breaking of the law that is taught by false shepherds be taking place in the city, and Yahweh not also have a righteous work there? It sure does. Just leave that gate and you'll see the false shepherds going after it. Most assuredly, Yahweh will have no work other than the house of Yahweh he has established, yet to be secret, to be hidden, according to the plan as prophesied by his servants, the prophets, from the beginning. Of course, it's at Abil also. Revelation 10 verse 7 says the same thing. Turn to page Revelation 10 verse 7 on page 977. We're rapidly getting to the closing point. Revelation 10 verse 7 on page 977. But in the days of the voice of the seventh Malach. Now, who is that? But in the days of the voice of the seventh Malach, when he will begin to sound, the great secret of Yahweh would be finished, as he declared to his servants the prophets. The word secret that is written in Revelation 10 verse 7 is translated from the Hebrew word sudu, as the Hebrew English New Testament by the Society of Distributing Hebrew Scriptures Incorporated, page 521 shows. The students' Hebrew and Chaldee Dictionary of the Old Testament by Alexander Harkavy, pages 57, 248, and 482, and the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davison, page 325, show this word means house, to found, to establish, the house of Yahweh, secret, to plot, to plan. Sure hear that plan a lot, don't we? Is anyone complaining? All right. But in the days of the voice of the seventh Malach, when he will begin to sound, the great house of Yahweh he has established, yet to be secret, to be hidden, according to his plan, as he declared to his servants the prophets from the beginning, would be finished. Or as Yeshua said, well done, thou faithful servant. Enter into the joy of Yahweh, your heavenly Father. The seventh Malach, the witness Israel, hidden by Yahweh by his allowing people to think he is a joke and of no relevance or importance, would be the first member of the house of Yahweh to be hidden. But he certainly is not the last. You people, all of us, brethren, I don't mean people in any insulting word, will be right behind him. Turn to Ephesians chapter 3, verse 9 on page 917. This will be our last scripture. The house of Yahweh must understand this ourselves and accept it. And it should be a joyful thing and not something to gripe about. Because this scripture shows not only has Israel been hidden by everybody thinking he's a nutcase, but the house of Yahweh has been hidden the same way. I don't know too many of you who haven't been identified as nuts. I don't know. Maybe we ought to get government assistance for it. If we're such a bunch of nutcases, maybe we could sign up as an insane asylum and get government support. The point I'm trying to make, how ridiculous it is, Yahweh uses the stupidity of this world to execute his plan. And that's what it's all about. But the house of Yahweh itself is to be hidden by people thinking there's nothing to it, that it's a joke, it's irrelevant. You're a bunch of nutcases, a bunch of religious nuts. Ephesians 3, verse 9 on page 917 tells it all. If you haven't gone there, go there now. I thought I called it out, but I might have missed it. That's what you do when you're running out of time. And to make all men plainly see how the secret is administered, which has been hidden by Yahweh from the beginning of the ages, who created all things. The word administered that is written in Ephesians 3:9 is translated from the Hebrew word chavar. A Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament, Majulius First, pages 198 and 415, shows this word means a common house, the house of Yahweh. For the same reason, the words Yahweh, for some reason, the words Yahshua Messiah have been deleted from Ephesians 3:9 in a lot of translations. Even though these words are written in all Hebrew manuscripts and many Greek and Latin translations of this verse. So put them back in there. The word in that is in the phrase Yahshua Messiah that was originally written in Ephesians 3:9 is translated from the Hebrew word Kohan. Kaf Nun Safit. This word is listed on page 609 of a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by Julius First, which shows this word means for because. So this is what Ephesians 3 verse 9 is saying. And to make all men plainly see how this secret, the house of Yahweh, has been hidden by Yahweh, who created all things from the beginning of the ages for Yahshua Messiah. He can't be high priest of anything unless there's a house of Yahweh for him to be a high priest over. So it's going to be hidden too. There's much more coming on this subject, including a lot of information about a lot of research work that we ran out of time doing that will be brought later on this year and the coming year. There's a lot of it. So, everyone, I hope you either took notes or at least wrote down these scriptures and the main points. Because my time's up. So at this time, would everyone please stand? Let me get my paperwork here. Take a few seconds. Close the book. And at this time, if I don't drop my cane, I'd like to introduce the great Kohan Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Of course, going out in this world today, we see the words of Yisrayl Hawkins going out, and you know this message is going out a lot stronger, and a lot more people are hearing these words than what we might realize. If you remember what Pastor brought about this milk that's in the world, and the actual bacteria, the unhealthy bacteria, the blood, the pus, and all of these things that are in the milk, Well, the dairy farmers are now saying this year alone they've had to pour out 43 million gallons of milk because no one will buy the milk. Well, maybe it's because they're becoming educated. Now, keep in mind, they're not going to keep doing that. They're going to start, McDonald's is going to start using more butter, and Taco Bell is going to have a new cheese dish. So it's not like they're going to try to get rid of it and repent. They're still going to try to sell it to you, so stay away from those things. And then notice the next article in Italy. Of course, Italy, Rome, around that area, they're going broke in Italy. They're actually facing austerity measures here before long. The EU not going to be able to bail them out the way it's going. But remember what Yahweh told Samuel whenever the children of Israel were rejecting Samuel, rejecting Yahweh by rejecting the one sent. He told them, tell them that your king is going to tax you, and they're going to tax you heavily. Well, think about this. Italy is now facing taxes. Their taxes is 50 to 60%. 50 to 60%, so they're not paying them. They're trying to get around and avoid paying them. But think about what that's doing to the people, how that's putting a stress on the people. And of course, they can't make their ends meet. They're facing deficit every year and nothing's working out for them. Italy's going broke. And then, of course, the UK recently, it just came out on RT this last week, the UK is shutting down RT's banking account in the UK. Of course, if they don't have a banking account there, they won't be able to pay their bills. But RT should know that they shut Yisrayl Hawkins down first the same way. And of course, they did it the same way. We will not take any complaints. We won't discuss this. It's final, settled. We don't want to hear another word. Our mind's made up. And that's what Russia is facing right now in the UK with getting this out. And then cholera. Now, they're saying there's cholera outbreaks in Yemen. They're saying there's cholera outbreaks in Haiti. But watch what they're saying. You have this disease. We need to come in and vaccinate all of you. They need to run, because that same person that's talking about these vaccines is also the same person that was endorsing the climate change. Which climate change, remember, there's too many humans on this earth. We need to do something about it. Watch very carefully what's taking place with that. And then, of course, you have the fight for Aleppo. It's important that everyone understands Aleppo in Syria. That's where you see this battle taking place. Russia and the United States, they're there combating. But that is the largest city in Syria. That is where the most commerce came from in Syria. 2.5 million people. That's a lot for Syria's size. 2.5 million people lived in that city. And that city is being utterly destroyed. But once again, remember what the original discussion was between Saudi Arabia wanting to put an oil line through Syria, Russia wanting to put an oil line through Syria. And in that brings a lot of money. Money. If you want to fight a war, you better have some money. And then watch very closely what Germany now. Germany is the largest trading partner with Russia in the EU. They are now considering more sanctions against Russia because they will not leave Aleppo. France considering more sanctions against Russia because they won't leave Aleppo. The UK and the United States considering more sanctions against Russia because they won't leave Aleppo. They're wanting to put sanctions on Russia. And remember, Russia is pushing for this BRICS banking system, which consists of 5 countries, and then sanctions won't matter once you do that because they're going to be doing trade with them. But why are they wanting to put sanctions? I just want to point this out very quickly, just to put this in your memory. Russia has recently, and they have the blueprints, and they've recently designed this, and there'll be more brought out on this, but it is a supersonic jet. It's a supersonic jet that literally enters into outer space to deliver the nuclear missiles, the hypersonic nuclear missiles. And Russia is in the developmental stages are already there. The engine has already been test proven and it works. So now they're in the putting it together kind of stage. To give you an idea what this jet does, this jet travels at 3,840 miles an hour. That's Mach 5. Compared to the American B-2 stealth bomber that only travels at 630 miles an hour. They can set a nuclear, supersonic, hypersonic missile anywhere in the world in 2 hours once this is done. Well, of course, the Vatican is saying, we can't let this take place. This is our last chance to save the earth. We need to get rid of Russia. We need to destroy Russia. We need to bring them back in. And of course, they're trying to do it through economic sanctions, and they're trying to control the money. You got to have money to build these things. But remember, Russia is a self-contained country. They have plenty of oil. They actually export more oil. Remember, they just surpassed Saudi Arabia. They sell more oil. They have the means to create the money if they can get the product on the global market. But when sanctions come in, you can't do it. But if you can find some trading partners that will ignore these other countries and they all take care of each other, you now have a way to take care of yourself and to fund what you want to fund. This article starts out, it says, it has been said whoever controls space controls the world, and Vladimir Putin is certainly trying to do his best. So that's something to keep in mind, because here recently, this last week, the Battle of Mosul, now that was the last stronghold in Iraq. They're trying to push out, they're trying to push out ISIS. Now this is very interesting because Russia immediately come out and said, you're not trying to push out ISIS, you guys are pulling reserves to go into Syria to fight in Aleppo. And it was very interesting because then the Iraqi forces, who say they're using special forces, we call that the United States, but Iraq calls it special forces, they actually sent out leaflets telling everyone, if you don't want to be in this battle, go ahead and leave. Well, obviously, there's a lot of people that's going to go ahead and leave, and they're going to go straight to Syria. And Russia is saying, you're pulling people to fight this battle. You're pulling out your reserves. Well, of course, we'll see what takes place. It's going into Aleppo to continue fighting this battle. And, of course, it's not slowing down. It's building up. The tensions are building. And, in fact, it's building so much, North Korea and South Korea are now in unity over one thing, and that's the United States. We're talking about the people, not the governments. The people of South Korea are saying, we do not want the United States bringing nuclear weapons back on our peninsula. You're going to turn us into a nuclear war zone. And that's exactly what's taking place. But now the people of South Korea are standing against this. And then to end, you're going to see where Ashton Carter, now he is, of course, our defense secretary, and they had to appear before the Senate Armed Committee to give a report on what's taking place in Syria and why we don't have a no-fly zone or a safe zone. That's just another word that makes it sound so much better. You're keeping people safe, but a no-fly zone. And, of course, watch the general, his name is Joseph Dunford, watch him slip up whenever he's asked, well, what can we do? And he says, well, we'll have to go to war. The room goes silent, the senators look frustrated, and then he goes back and says, no, watch very carefully, because he goes, oh, I never said we had to go to war. But watch very carefully. You will see it, because they have all intentions. They need to bring Russia into subjection, under control, because remember, they're vying for a top spot. At this time, if we could please play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, Russia may be facing more sanctions. We'll have those details. Also, North Korea test fires another missile and blames it on U.S. provocations. And an interesting discussion on the Syrian no-fly zone. We'll have some details on that. Right. Well, all of this and much more, but first, too much milk. Well, we've all heard the phrase, don't cry over spilt milk, but dairy farmers across the country are spilling it on purpose. Between January and August of 2016, American farmers have dumped 43 million gallons of milk out in the fields, manure lagoons, and wherever they can. Now, there is simply too much milk being produced right now, and it costs more to haul it away than it's worth.
Interesting. Well, the surplus of milk in 2016 came in response to a shortage just 2 years ago when dairy farmers began increasing the supply to help regulate high prices. Today, the excess milk has overwhelmed farmers as the price of milk has been slashed 36% since that high in 2014.
Well, besides dumping the milk, Dairy Management Incorporated, a marketing firm, has stepped in to encourage restaurants to use more milk products on their menus. Now, McDonald's, for example, has made the switch from margarine to using real butter for their muffins, and Taco Bell has smothered cheese all over its latest and greatest meal.
Wow, it's amazing that there was just utterly too much milk. Well, the USDA is also trying to help out farmers by committing to purchase $20 million of cheese surplus. The government is wanting to do that, and some milk is also being donated to food banks as well. While these measures are giving some relief. There is still too much milk being produced, amazingly, and the dairy industry is now looking for ways to cut back their herds to save their family farms. In the meantime, they will continue to cry over spilled milk. So they're not getting the profit out of it because there's too much of a surplus. So hopefully they don't go under as a result of this.
Well, Italy's finance ministry recently released a new report disclosing a serious tax evasion problem that continues to plague Italy's economy. Now, the report found that between 2010 and 2014, the amount of taxes collected was, on average, 109 billion euros less than what should have been collected.
Well, the report highlights that non-payment of VAT and personal tax income account for about 3/4 of the total evaded tax. The VAT in Italy is the value-added tax, and it is an indirect tax on all business transactions involving goods and services only paid by EU consumers. Now, in 2010, for example, the VAT for business transactions and purchases was 20%, and the tax for basic products was 4 to 10%. A tax of 4 to 8% was also levied on assets.
Well, it seems that Italians are just not paying their taxes. Tax experts argue it is mainly due to the country's extremely complex tax laws. Now, one member of the CGIL union, or the Italian General Confederation of Labor, reported that tax codes can be misleading and very high in the country, ranging anywhere between 50 and 60%.
When you wonder how anyone could actually survive, even running a business with a tax rate of 50 to 60%. Yeah. Unreal. Well, NatWest, a British bank in London, has notified Russia Today News that they are closing their accounts in the European country. RT received this official statement which said, "We have recently undertaken a review of your banking arrangements with us and reached the conclusion that we will no longer provide these facilities. Our decision is final, and we are not prepared to enter into any discussion in relation to it."
The letter was received at RT's London offices, basically stating they will close RT's accounts within 2 months. Now, at this point, no further information has been given, and according to existing regulations in the UK, it is a normal procedure for a bank not to offer any explanation. Now, RT has been a customer of NatWest for over 10 years, and this notification comes basically without any warning.
Well, I wonder how that's going to affect business for RT in that area. Well, RT's lawyers are looking into what this could mean for the news broadcasting company on a wider scale, and if further consequences could come as a chain reaction. While the company itself was extremely disturbed by the news, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, had a few choice words for the British government. It seems when the UK decided to leave the EU, they also left all of their freedom of speech obligations there. Looks like they're leaving all bad habits behind.
Well, Haiti might be facing another hurdle. The UN says that the cholera outbreak after Hurricane Matthew may be underestimated. Now, the southwestern part of Haiti has roads that remain still impassable because of the hurricane damage. Right. Now, David Nabarro, the special advisor to the UN chief, is concerned because sick people are not being treated. So roads are still impassable. They're not getting the aid to those who are sick, and therefore they're not getting treated. And, of course, that's how that disease can continue to spread.
And they still haven't fully recovered from the earthquake that they had several years ago either. Right. Wow, it seems like they can't catch a break. Well, German Chancellor Angela Merkel believed more sanctions against Russia might be necessary. She expressed her views ahead of talks with the Russian president on Syria. She stated, "The French president and I will use the opportunity the meeting gives us to talk to the Russian president about the situation in Syria."
Now, she continued, "I already held extensive discussions at the G20 summit in Hangzhou, as did the French president. The humanitarian situation in Syria has become even more catastrophic, and this has clearly been caused by the Syrian and Russian bombardments on helpless people. Hospitals, doctors, and of course, we will bring this up."
Well, delivering humanitarian aid to people will be the main focus in her meeting with President Putin. Russian, Ukrainian, and French leaders will be among those hosted by Germany for peace talks concerning eastern Ukraine, while the German and French leaders plan to also address Russia's support for the Syrian government. Well, the issue has triggered growing tensions between Moscow and, of course, the West.
Well, of course, where the Middle East is concerned, it's not just Syria that's in chaos. Things have never actually settled down in Iraq. And Larry McGee has our story on what's being called the final battle for Mosul. Larry, what are the details in this battle?
The excitement began after an announcement by the Iraqi Prime Minister of the government's intentions to retake the critical city of Mosul from the Marian mercenaries of ISIS. Flanked by military officials, Prime Minister al-Abadi delivered a televised speech to the citizens of the ancient province of Nineveh, declaring that the time of victory has come and that operations to liberate the city of Mosul have started. The Iraqi head is promising that Iraq's national flag will soon be raised in the city, which ISIS had previously taken and designated as the capital of its caliphate. The prime minister stated that only the army and police of Iraq will be entering the city, with the exception of special groups created to dispense humanitarian aid to the 1.5 million civilians, on behalf of which the UN is said to be expressing extreme concern. Though Baghdad is determined to demonstrate its ability to stand on its own too in the coming face-off, Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter says the U.S. and its confederates are prepared to support the Iraqi army in its bid to recapture Mosul. The secretary is quoted as stating further that the Mosul operation represents a decisive moment to bring ISIS to a lasting defeat and end the insurgents' hatred and brutality. Ahead of it all, Iraqi war machines are being prepared and showcased, along with thousands of leaflets which are being dropped by the Iraqi aircraft with safety instructions for residents. Forces are said to simply be waiting for the green light from Baghdad. The fight is being billed as the final battle between the mercenaries of ISIS and the government, intended to reestablish the prestige of the Iraqi army and save the people of Mosul in the ancient Nimrodic province of Nineveh. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, interesting. There's a lot of tension, a lot of battles, a lot of disunity in that area, and I bet you the civilians are really wanting to see all these things put to an end so they can get back to some form of normality in their homes. Well, as the battle for Aleppo continues, rebel factions say they broke through government lines. Both jihadists and rebel forces have been battling for the city for the past few years. Well, just a few days after the battle to end the siege on the rebel-held Aleppo began, a number of rebel groups have broken through Syrian lines.
Ahmad Sultan, a commander in Arar al-Sham, said in an interview with the Daily Beat news agency, "God willing, we will open the Ramoses Road today with our brothers from the Army of Conquest, and God willing, we will become one united army." Now, a short drive from Turkey's border, Aleppo is Syria's biggest city before the conflict, home to more than 2 million people, and was once Syria's economic powerhouse. But 5 years into the Syrian conflict, humanitarians have warned that people in East Aleppo risk starvation.
Sad. The U.S. and Britain have warned that they will impose sanctions on Russia and Syria over the conflict in Syria's Aleppo. John Kerry said, "We are considering sanctions, and let me make it clear. The president, speaking of Barack Obama, has not taken any option off the table at this time. So we'll see where we are in the next few days over the context of discussions." Well, Mr. Kerry made these comments at a press conference with British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson.
He made these comments at a press conference with British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson in London. Now, top diplomats also called on Moscow to help end the conflict in Syria. Ministers from 9 countries gathered in Lausanne, but failed to come up with a joint statement in the Syrian crisis.
Well, North Korea is considering to be a severe threat to the region as they have tested another ballistic missile. Cho Jun-hyuk, South Korea's foreign ministry spokesman, said as North Korea test-fired another intermediate ballistic missile, which is a clear violation of the UN Security Council resolution, and that is regardless of success or failure. The government strongly condemns it, and it is a great threat to the safety and security of the Korean Peninsula and the international society as a whole.
The spokesman also called on North Korea to abide by the UN resolution. Now, the Pentagon also condemned the test, calling it a provocation. South Korea and U.S. say that North Korea has unsuccessfully tested the ballistic missile with medium-range missiles that can reach U.S. bases in the Pacific. The Security Council is considering new sanctions against Pyongyang after its fifth missile test last month. North Korea says its tests are in response to U.S. provocations in the region.
Well, in a recent meeting with diplomats of South Korea and Washington, Secretary of State John Kerry warned North Korea of retaliation if it launches a nuclear attack on the U.S. or South Korea. When South Korea activists are targeting the diplomats, protesting that the U.S. is bringing nuclear war to the Korean Peninsula.
In that meeting with the Korean diplomats, the U.S. again made it clear that North Korea would be met with an overwhelming response to a nuclear attack. The U.S. is deploying more advanced weapons to the region, along with a missile defense system scheduled to be in use next year. Now, Kerry spoke of the U.S.'s commitment to defend South Korea through a robust defense posture and through extended deterrence, including the U.S. nuclear umbrella, conventional strike, and missile defense capabilities.
South Korea activists opposed the militarization of the Korean Peninsula, especially with the presence of the American THAAD missile system. Many argue that the growing military alliance between their region and the U.S. fuels regional arms race while risking Seoul's relation with its neighbors. Well, Omi Jingong of the Solidarity for Peace and Reunification of Korea spoke at a protest saying the United States extended deterrent policy doesn't guarantee security and will bring a nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula. So obviously they're very frustrated about this.
She continued, extended deterrence mean nuclear war, and the continued deterrent strategy is now crystallizing into solid plans and actions. Now, South Korean leaders have recently called on the South Korean government to obtain nuclear weapons. Now, those discussions are underway to redeploy B-52 or B-1B bombers, F-22 stealth fighter jets, and nuclear-powered submarines to that region.
Interesting. The U.S. removed its nuclear-powered warheads in the 1990s, but with the renewed nuclear umbrella over South Korea, Washington has moved one step closer to the redeployment of nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula.
Well, concerning ISIS and Assad, take a look at this C-SPAN video where Defense Secretary Ashton Carter answered questions regarding Assad and the events taking place in Syria. Take a look.
As the president has said, Assad has lost his legitimacy and cannot be a part of the long-term future of Syria. Is that statement still operative?
I think it is. And I'll just give a general answer to your general question. You're right, it was discussed earlier. And even though we are going to be, I'm confident, militarily successful against ISIL, insofar as the Syrian civil war is concerned, the violence can't end there. The violence can't end there. The violence can't end there until there's a political transition from Assad to a government that is decent and that can govern the Syrian people and put that tragically broken country back together. That doesn't look in sight now. That doesn't look in sight now. That doesn't look in sight now. It is what we talked earlier about. Secretary Kerry's trying to make arrangements to promote.
Well, let me just ask this, if you don't mind, Secretary Carter. It would help if the barrel bombing ended. And I spoke to a Democratic colleague of mine today. I've been calling for a no-fly zone to stop the barrel bombing, and I asked this colleague of mine on the other side of the aisle, if he would support that. And he said, yes. He said, I want to call it something else rather than a no-fly zone, but that this particular senator, it is a fact that this particular senator has now changed his position and would like us to take action to prevent the barrel bombing. What is your position about that? And wouldn't it help if we took decisive action and ended this carnage?
I don't know the specific proposal which you're discussing with your colleague. Make one comment and then see if the chairman wants to add anything.
I think he was talking about a no-fly zone, but described in more palatable terms.
There are a number of different proposals have been made, but the one that I think focus on right now is the one Secretary Kerry's trying to promote. Namely, a no-fly zone for the Russians and the Syrians who are attacking the Syrian people. If they're talking about a no-fly zone for American aircraft fighting ISIL, needless to say, that's not going to get any enthusiasm, get strong opposition from me. But I think that's what it's. But it's not called that. But Secretary Kerry's trying to get a stand down of the Syrian and Russian Air Force, and if he's successful, that would be a good thing. You can ask the chairman if he has anything to add.
Senator, the only thing I'd say is, as the situation on the ground changes, I think I have a responsibility, we, the Joint Force, has a responsibility to make sure the President has a full range of options. We have discussed that issue in the past under certain conditions. The conditions on the ground will change, and we'll continue to look at those options and make sure they're available to the President.
What about the option of controlling the airspace so that barrel bombs cannot be dropped?
All the options.
What do you think of that option, sir?
Right now, Senator, for us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war. For us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war, 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 go to war against Syria and Russia. That's a pretty fundamental decision that certainly I'm not going to make.
To impose a no-fly zone.
Chairman, could I for a second just answer?
No, Senator Gillibrand.
That's not what I said, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Well, I do think
what Senator asked me was to control all of the airspace.
No, what he asked was, should we have a no-fly zone so we can protect these people from being slaughtered? That's what he's talking about.
I answered that first.
That's what we're all talking about.
So that would not require going to war full scale, would it?
Not necessarily, Senator. I'm sorry, but I tried to answer the first question first, and then I was responding to the second part of your question. But I did not mean to say that imposing a no-fly zone would require us to go to war. That's not the question I was answering. For us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war. But I did not mean to say that imposing a no-fly zone would require us to go to war. For us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war. But I did not mean to say that imposing a no-fly zone would require us to go to war. That's not the question I was answering.
Interesting.
Sounds like he couldn't make up his mind. Are we going to war or are we not going to war?
Yeah, time will definitely tell. Well, even though we're heading into the winter months in the Northern Hemisphere, the hatred in the nations is definitely heating up. Well, is there any protection from what seems like impending nuclear war? If so, where can you go to find that safety and protection? Well, are you ready for the answer? The house of Yahweh is where you can go, and of course, Yahweh and his laws are the only protection for anyone seeking safety from the coming destruction. Contact the house of Yahweh to find out what Yisrayl Hawkins has been showing mankind for over 50 years as to what brings war and what brings peace.
And when you do contact the House of Yahweh, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. To contact them, you can write the House of Yahweh at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. Call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website at www.ypnnews.com And for any emails, you can email at info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen. And once again, we'd like to remind you of the Yisrayl Says program, a Bible tool that can help you study and get all the questions you've ever wanted to know about the Bible answered by just punching it in the search and look at all the results. So go to www.yisraelsays.com for more.
Well, with darkness looming over the hearts and the minds of man, don't go anywhere, because up next, the only one authorized to bring forth true light to the entire world through the teachings found in the Holy Scriptures, Yisrayl Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.
At this time, if everyone would please stand, I would like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kohan, Yisrayl, Abil Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Oh, Yahweh, you see this? Oh, it's unbelievable. Praise Yahweh. You may be seated. We have a lot to cover today. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. I asked for more time, and I'd like for everyone really to get ready for intense study right now, because if you don't get these things down, if you miss out on them and you don't make it up with disc or something, you're going to be liking when, that when you're chosen, if you're chosen, and I'm in hopes that no one here is going to lose out. I want all of you in this kingdom with me. Praise Yahweh. The article that was chosen this week, the news release that we put out, Yisrayl Hawkins says, prophesied message, listen to me, all nations, are not mere buzzwords. Listen to me, all nations. Those words are not merely buzzwords. That article has reached, right now, it's 7 o'clock this morning. That's when they first called me and told me it was up to 78,855 news medias. News medias, headline impressions. They sent me this one. Well, that was that was just before I came up. At 7 o'clock, it was 74,000, and now it's 78,855. It's coming up about 1,300 an hour of readers that is tuning in on this, getting the message. And, of course, we're hearing from a lot of those people around the world. We're at the tops again on Google, and praise Yahweh. The story under this is rather fascinating, because it goes along with the news article that I wrote. Tensions on Temple Mount. It shows the Muslim mosque, and then underneath that, what the feast of I think that's Yisrayl, means. What the feast of Israel means for Christ's followers. I didn't write that one, someone else did, but I thought it was like it's put together to improve ours, or to add to what we were bringing. The news article here, Russia nearly ready to drop nukes from space Now, that will be shown to you tomorrow morning. Don't miss tomorrow. We've got a lot of information lined up for you. Kohan Shaul has got a very needed sermon that's going to be brought. We're going to have more on the numbers that need to be brought for you to understand today's sermon and tomorrow's sermon also. But this thing that Russia is doing now, it's for one purpose, I believe. I think the Vatican is putting this information out myself. I think that they're wanting to scare the people into thinking that Russia is going to hit the United States first, so we need to hit them first. Now that's I do believe that this will speed up the people when they see this and they see that Russia can drop a bomb from outer space and pinpoint the location of that nuclear bomb. Pinpoint it anywhere in the world from this plane that carries, they mentioned 16 nuclear bombs, 16. That would hit quite a few major cities. I'm saying they won't have time to build it now because this is going to put fear in the people, and the people are going to get behind the Vatican. The Vatican is trying to gain votes to, if you remember a few months ago, maybe that date could be brought out, where all the nations signed allegiance with the Vatican to protect the earth, that's what they're saying, protect the earth by killing 4/5 of the earth's population and leaving 2 billion Catholics. That's what Malachi Martin said. They hope to come out on top. United States hopes to come out on top, and Russia hopes to come out on top. So they're bringing this information about Russia, saying, you know, in a few more months now, they're going to have this nuclear flying plane that can actually orbit the earth with speeds unlike anything else ever invented. Bombs that they can send to hit not just a city, but a pinpoint in that city where it'll do the most damage. So you can see the what is taking place here is being promoted. It's propaganda. It's propaganda. I don't doubt that Russia's building greater planes, and of course this plane won't be ready for a while. They're putting the final touches on it now. But if they say, you know, we've got to hit them before they get this plane built, you can see the danger we're in. Well, of course, this is going to promote first track. At this same time now, what we're facing, let me take a moment here. I just saw this pair setting here. I'm glad they set it up here. Let me see if I could find something. I wrote that. I was supposed to mention this first. If you don't know what this is, I'll put it here where you can see it. It's rather homely, isn't it? This is our pears. It's grown here on our property. Praise Yahweh. Now, what most people don't know is the pears only ripen during the Feast of Tabernacles. Does that tell you anything? They bloom early in the spring. They start making this fruit right here that I'm holding up before you for the fall. They spend the whole spring, summer, and fall gathering from deep in the earth foods that that shallow root, the shallow-rooted trees like peaches and oranges and apples, they can't reach what this pear reaches in the ground. They go down deep, way down deep in the ground. And they gather it all summer, slowly but surely, putting that in this fruit that I'm holding up for you right now. We woke up at the beginning of the feast with these pears hanging everywhere. They're all over the sukkahs, or should be. I can't see the sukkahs. Someone was telling me that they didn't have the sukkahs fully decorated yet, but there should be pears on there. All the sukkahs, they should be loaded down with these pears. We have plenty. All grown right here on House of Yahweh property. The poor also have they're free, by the way. The poor also have the laws taught to them at the house of Yahweh. Something you don't see in the other religions. I hope by this next feast, Feast of Passover, that cash registers become a thing of the past in the house of Yahweh. We can make that true. Depends on what kind of conditions that come to pass that we're facing. I don't expect this to go past 2016, and I was talking to the great Elder Kohan Kraus Hawkins about bringing this in a morning information on this date, because it comes out in the numbers also. We know it's going to be in this generation. The Savior said, when you see this nuclear bomb that can darken the sun, then know that all of these things are going to be fulfilled in that generation that started in 1934, shown by Daniel. So we're in the last part of this generation. Now, at the same time that these bombs are being produced, and Israel, I noticed, was asking for 3 more submarines, the nation Israel, 3 more submarines. No doubt they want them to carry nuclear bombs. They're getting ready for this burning, this great burning. Surely anyone can see this as taking place among the nations. They're getting ready for a great burning to take place. You'll understand more of this as we proceed in the sermons in this today and tomorrow. It says U.S. churches now, adding to this, U.S. churches to prepare. They're saying U.S. churches urged to prepare. They're being coaxed. They're being told, prepare for Islamic terror attacks. All the churches, get ready for war. Get ready to go to war against the Muslims. This is what the Vatican is saying. It's the religions that are running this earth, and it's the religions that are promoting these wars. With Russia, the Vatican can't reach into Russia. She tried. The priests, the ten kings, Russia was not one of them. Remember? China was not one of them. The 10 kings, there was 4 of them. There was 14 altogether. 4 of them refused to come. Yahweh told you years in advance there'd only be 10. In 96 AY, he told you there'd only be 10 of these. But there's 14. But they didn't pledge their allegiance to the Vatican. And Malachi Martin talked about this in his book, The Keys of This Blood. As Islamic terror threats against churches escalate, I haven't heard of any of that here in the United States. I've seen them hit other places. The United States is being protected, and any fool could see that, simply because the house of Yahweh is here in the United States taking forth Yahweh's work. And of course it's protected. There may be some threats and some killings. This has been going on for years, but I don't know of any major threats against any churches. The only threats that they had against churches that I know of is over there where the churches was in their territory trying to get their women to walk down the streets naked and trying to promote God worship that promotes fornication, adultery, sodomy, and bestiality. And of course, the Muslims were fighting back saying, no, we don't want the West bringing this to our country. So we went in and started killing them, and they're fighting back. They didn't prepare for this war, but now they're preparing for war. I'm not holding up for the Muslims. They're God worshipers. But they have some laws that the Vatican hates. They hate righteousness. You heads of Yahaqob, Micaiah 3. You heads of Yahaqob. That's who is bringing forth this, who hates righteousness, and they're trying to destroy all righteousness. But that's not the number one thing they're trying to do right now. They're trying to set up to destroy all of mankind and the heavens that have anything to do with this plan of Yahweh as the reason he created the earth. That's what Satan and her sons are wanting to destroy. And Yeshua made the statement, if heaven and earth can pass away, if she and her sons can destroy heaven and earth, then unless they do, these laws of Yahweh are going to go clear to the universe forever. Now that's what the Savior said. I'll read you the scripture later. As Islamic terror threats against churches escalate, so should churches. See, they're preparing the churches to fight or hate the Muslim people, to create or be willing for them to create this nuclear war to wipe out 4/5 of the earth's population. This is the scheme, to wipe out the population. 4/5. We got to save the earth, the Pope is saying. That's the tale that the Vatican told him to say. Use the words, use these words. We're going to save the earth while they prepare to burn the earth and kill the people. In addition to physical security, Chadwick suggests churches need to think about who will be legally liable if the need to shoot arises. You can see the speech was well made up, and the Vatican is great at this, that they've been great at it for, I read years ago that they were great at using propaganda, and before we have the weapons that we have now, they would make up a story about a certain Yadim, a group of Yadim somewhere, and they'd say, those people make dog food. Those people manufacture dog food. Now, we've had several children disappear in that area. They got a big dog food thing they're going. And they'd bring hatred, not saying that they were killing people and using them for dog food, but certainly indicating it. Malachi Martin also brought that out. And they would they'd take men and say, gather up and get whatever weapon you got, and they used picks, shovels, hoes, knives, whatever they could get, and they went down and wiped out that community. And of course, took all their wealth, whatever wealth they had. This went on in Israel too, that's where it started. Among the heads of Yahaqob, those who hate righteousness. Unworthy victims. Western wars have killed over 4 million Muslims since 1990. Over 4 million. So you can see that this propaganda is working. And they're making the people feel great about it. Do the math. Global war on terror. Now this is to save the earth, of course. But it's only killing the Muslims. Global war on terror. We went in and invaded their country, remember? The United States went in and invaded their countries. But we're trying to save our country by invading their country. People who weren't doing anything, they had no weapons, they had a lot of oil, and they didn't have a lot of diseases in their country, but those are spreading now. I'm telling you the truth, you better wake up and see this propaganda. It's all part of Satan's scheme, Satan and her sons. Do the math. Global war on terror has killed 4 million Muslims or more. Global armed conflicts becoming more deadly, major study finds. Well, the wars are growing. The countries are trying to defend themselves, and they're falling into the trap, see, that the same trap that Cain fell into. President Obama is doing, turn over to Revelation 6. President Obama is doing exactly what the Scripture says that he would do. He's not the only one. He's only following orders of the Vatican, who has their tentacles in every state in the United States, every court of the United States. It's set up, the municipal systems is set up to where they can make war against anyone who brings any truth, any name Yahweh, keeps the commandments, teaches the laws. In Revelation 6, we see here in verse 1, we see here the Lamb opens the seal here. Now, I brought this out and showed you other scriptures. The scriptures were sealed, of course, in Daniel's day. There was no one after that brought these prophecies of Daniel. The Yeshua added to them. The apostles added explanations, all of this under inspiration, so you could understand what was written by the prophets and put it all together and see Yahweh's great plan to stop the sin in the universe, stop the hell that caused the earth to flood before mankind was put on it, and then again give mankind unrestricted reign and show how fast it come to an end with the flood of Noah. Now, all of these things are a lesson to us. While you're seeing this study here, remember I brought out Eob. I will again. But Eob didn't understand one thing. He knew he was a righteous man. He knew he was following the laws of Yahweh. Yahweh testified that he was perfect. You can't beat that. The testimony of Yahweh himself was that Eob was perfect, a perfect man. What better person could Yahweh hold up to heaven and say, "Have you considered my servant Eob?" And he did this. Now, on a day when Satan and her sons visited, they had a court appointment actually. This was a court appointment where Yahweh himself brought up Eob while Satan and her sons were running down, saying this is not, mankind is simply not capable of taking over our jobs. And that's exactly what they're going to do, by the way. In case you don't remember, the book of Hebrews says, Yahweh says, "Let all my sons worship this man." How would you feel if you were in power and you're a worldly person? How would you feel if Yahweh or somebody took another man took you out of a position because you were not doing the job properly, and said, what you need to do is worship this man I'm putting in office. Now that's the scenario that we see in the Holy Scriptures. It's beautiful. Yahweh gave them rain, and then he let them see, he let them go their way totally, and then he says, you have really done damage. And he showed them, they could see the damage they were doing, and anyone could see that it wasn't just done by accident. And the wars that are going on in heaven right now, promoted by the sons of Yahweh, the original sons of Yahweh, yes, they're in office, they're fighting wars. They won't go any further than what they've gone right now. They're chained. Satan is too. She can't advance any further into causing more damage, because all the knowledge she has, it's being turned to nuclear war. And Yahweh can show heaven. This is what this wisdom that you're following, or the lack of wisdom, the wisdom that you won't accept. The wisdom that you won't accept. Your head is filled with knowledge, but the wisdom of Yahweh you won't accept, which would bring you peace, joy, and love, instead of wars and fighting. Take away anger. Why are you angry, Cain? Why are you angry? If you do righteousness, you won't get angry, Cain. Yeah, I'm saying that to you. This is what Yahweh said to Cain. We should get the lesson. Well, here in Revelation 6, we see the Lamb opening the seal that hasn't been understood until this last day's seventh light, work, promotion, mountain of Yahweh is being promoted. Starting with two witnesses, the last being born in 1934, the same year the nuclear bomb started, 1934, the same time, same year that the knowledge increase that Daniel prophesied, Daniel 12:4, it started in 1934. The last witness was born in 34, the bomb was born in 1934, and the increase in knowledge was born, the computer, in 1934. All of those came forth at the same time to bring in this last generation. Yes, we're in it right now, and Yeshua says it's not going to pass away till you see the sun darkened. And then in 96 AY, he told Yachanan to write the words, you're going to see it burnt to a crisp. In fact, these people are going to be ashes underneath your feet that are promoting these wars and saying, get ready to fight back, fight the Muslims. If you check the records, the people that have done the most killing in the United States is Christian. It's easy to check these records, but they're blaming the Muslims and saying, now they're building up, they're going to come after you, so get ready to kill them before they come after you. Let's get the first strike in. That's the idea. Let's get the first strike in against Russia, because her king will not join the Vatican and lend support to the Vatican. We can't get any money out of that nation. We can't get any money out of China. Malachi Martin said this. He said, these nations have been able to retain their own wealth. And he said, the Vatican doesn't like this. Malachi Martin, their own writer, The Keys of This Blood, the book, The Keys of This Blood, one of the very few men, I think he is the only man that I knew of that actually knew that they were carrying the staff that was given to the Yadim, to Yahodah, the staff of rulership, and will carry it until this nuclear war ends. until Yahweh makes them ashes underneath your feet. Yes, that's what will end the rulership of the Yadim, the ones who hate righteousness. Well, here the Lamb opens this seal now. Keep all those things in mind. And now the Lamb, Yeshua Messiah, is opening this seal so you can understand. But you can't just half-heartedly take this lesson. You know, you're going to have to really put these scriptures together that I'm going to give you, put them together so you'll understand them. And you'll understand Yahweh's complete plan and how He's bringing it about, how He's brought it about so far. Well, I heard, as it were, one of the four. Look back over to chapter 4 and look at verse 6. This is what we're speaking of here. These four is the Coptic Catholic. Yes, it started in Egypt with Ham, the father of Cush. You know, remember Cush? He shows his sons in chapter 10 of Genesis. I've been through all this now. But it shows Cush's sons in one verse. Then in the very next verse it says, Cush fathered Nimrod. The Nimrod school of learning, which became a terror against all who would not join them. Come join us so we won't be separated throughout the earth. Come join us. And his first city was confusion. The very first city, remember that? Cush, who came from Egypt, the Coptic Catholic, and instituted God worship. God worship is a way of force. And of course, Israel had a city for every god. In fact, they had more gods than cities that they worship. That's the heads of Yahaqob had this. The few that brought forth Yeshua and his seed, who lived in Galilee, the kings didn't even want them. They didn't want to fool with them. Solomon gave Galilee to one king, and the king gave it back to him. Said, I don't want it. They didn't want these people that worshiped Yahweh. Well, chapter 4 now, remember 6:1 shows the four, one of the four. Chapter 4 and verse 6 says, and before the throne there was a sea of glass. Go back to verse 5. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings. Verse 4, surrounding the throne was 24 seats. And then verse 6 now. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal. This is to show you now, I'm making it clear as crystal, remember that. And in the midst of the throne and surrounding the throne were these four living creatures. These four living creatures are the Coptic Catholics, the Christians, the Yadim, and the Muslim. And that's what you see running the world today, those four. And they got nations to back them up. And this is the way it started with the kings that's in Samuel. When they said, we want a king to rule over us like all the other nations. Well, this is what they chose. Then the kings started fighting the kings. And of course, the strongest king, which became, Yahweh said it would be Nebuchadnezzar, that would put forth the strongest army and rule the world, rule all the rest of the kings for a while. And then this would collapse, but the religion, the Coptic Catholic religion, would remain. And it would take over all the earth, and did for a while successfully, but they broke up, of course. As Daniel said, iron mixed with clay will not stay together. They're going to break up. He didn't say they'd diminish or all die off and we wouldn't see these Coptic Catholics or Christians or Muslims anymore. He said they will just break up and go in different ways throughout the earth. In Genesis 49, he says, I will scatter this these genes throughout the whole earth, these genes of wickedness or God worship. He says, now here's the one thing they have in common. Chapter 4, verse 6. And in the midst of the throne and surrounding the throne were these four creatures. All four of them now are filled with eyes. Eyes where they can see everywhere. They got radar, they got satellites, they can see the earth at a distance, they can zero in. Someone showed me his telephone, and he zeroed in on the house of Yahweh, pinpoint, shown from the satellite in the sky. Now, and right on top of us, pinpointed it, and seeing every move we make out here. Praise Yahweh, I'm glad. Eyes before and behind. The description here in chapter 4 and verse 6, you got to understand this, the description 4. They all had these eyes. And then verse 7, he says, and the first creature was like a lion. You never understand that in this manner. It's like they're separating these. It should be written like it is in chapter 6, where all four had eyes. Because each one of these things that are given after this, describing these four creatures, is describing all four characteristics. All four have these same characteristics. This word like, it means it's not describing looks. It's not describing like a door on a house. One had a door on a house. It's not that. It's describing it should be, if you put liking or likened unto instead of like, it will make more sense to you. Meaning qualities. Each of these four creatures in this time period, speaking of the last days, I'll show you things which will come to pass in a short time. That's what Yochanan wrote about. And he said, write these things down. Well, this meaning, this one word is qualities. Another one is characteristics. Each of these four had all four of them had the same characteristic. They're not all different from one another. All of them have the same characteristics, the same attitudes as Cain. All the world has gone the way of Cain. All the people have the same possessions. All of these religions. The word like in 4 verse 7, it actually means, that is, this Greek word that they translated like. It actually means nature, quality. It's number 3664. It's having almost or exactly the same qualities, characteristics, wisdom, and knowledge. I added that wisdom and knowledge, but the other is in your dictionaries and concordances. But that's what this is meaning here. And if you'll read it with that in mind, you'll see this. They were all full of eyes. Then verse 7, the first of their nature, of their natures, of their characteristics, is the way it should read. Their qualities, liking is liking to, you see that word lion? Lion? He says the first was like a lion. So these qualities, possessions, characteristics, is like going face to face with a lion. You see? Now, hold your place right there and look over to Genesis 49. If you had that little tab I was talking about, you could just reach and get it and turn right to that. I turn to that sometimes 20 times a day, depending on what I'm writing about, but it saves me a lot of time. See, I'd be still hunting like you if I didn't have that little tab. I want you to read this now, so everybody get it. If you got a red pen, this is what your scripture would look like. I've got to retire this book. I don't know, we have 2 in here or 1? 1 or 2? The book of Yahweh? Just 1 or 2? 2? About to get another one. It's getting to where it's, I'm having trouble reading the pages. When you use paper and you have a certain oil that comes from your fingers, and of course that oil eventually stains paper. I guess I should wear rubber gloves. That would help. Has everybody got this now? Hold your place. Did I say hold your place in Revelations 4? I'll read it to you. 4 verse 7. The first was likened, if you read that, if that way. The first was likened unto a line. Unto a line. If you go to Genesis 49 verse 8, you will see who this is talking about here. Verse 8, Yahodah, your brothers will praise you. Now we know that this character he's speaking here is not the person Yahodah, but the nations that he will become, the tribes and nations and multitudes and peoples and languages that he will become. Verse 8, Yahodah, your brothers will praise you. Now this is still going on. Yahodah holds the ruling staff. That's the reason they're praising him. This ruling staff is a religion, and it sits in the last days on the 7 hills of Rome. Yahweh sent them to Egypt to learn what it would be like in God worship, what God worship would bring them. And of course, he told them what it was going to be like when they finally refused to obey him and wanted a king like all other nations. So he sent them down to Egypt, and they stayed there 450 years. And then Yahweh brought them out. Brought out all of these Egyptians, Coptic Catholic religions, is what he brought out and brought it to Galilee, to this promoted mountain of his. In verse 8, he says, Yahodah, your brothers will praise you. This was what will take place. Read verse 1. This is what's going to take place, be taking place. The last 2 words of that sentence, verse 1. Last days. Yeshua spoke of the last days would have the nuclear bomb that would darken the sun. So, in the last days, your brothers will all praise you. His brothers is scattered throughout the earth. Right now, they're ruling the cities, they're ruling the nations. It's only when they have a king like Russia, China, that resists the takeover of the Vatican and fights against it. You can have your religion here, but you can't give your authority to or your money to the Vatican. Now, this is the rules they got. And of course, when the kings stop doing this, they get rid of them. They disappear. Saddam Hussein, remember? You remember the things that's taken place there in that 4th part of the earth already. It's because they refused the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church, according to Malachi Martin, was going to take this over. All of these nations is going to be taken over, and the Vatican hopes to come out on top. So does the United States, who they're bringing into this war with their great weapon, and so does Russia. Okay, in the last days then, your brothers will praise you, and praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of all your enemies, and your father's sons will bow down to you. The lion's cub, you are a lion's cub. What did Revelation say? All these nations now are likened unto a lion. That's their characteristics that they're cherishing in this time period. In the last day, they're like lions. Who will dare to arouse them? That's what they're saying. That's what Yahweh is showing you here. Verse 9, Genesis 49:9, you are a lion's cub, O Yahodah, you return from the prey, my son, like a lion. He crouches and lies down like the lion's breed. Who dares arouse him? The scepter will not depart from you, Yahodah. The scepter, this is a ruling scepter. Yahweh scepter is given to Yeshua, is supposed to be what Yahodah is ruling by or governing by. That's what he gave to Moshe. But they said, we don't want to be like you. We don't want Yahweh to rule over us. We want to do it on our own. We want kings. The scepter should have been righteousness, to love righteousness and hate evil. So they're likened unto lions in these last days. And verse 10 says, the scepter will not depart from Yahodah, nor the ruling staff, that is lawgiver. He's giving laws for the world, from between his feet until. So its prophecy shows a stopping point. Until he comes to whom tribute actually belongs. And the obedience of the nations is his. So it's not going to be given to Yeshua until the obedience of the nation. See that? Till I make your enemies your footstool. Until it's going to be in the hands of Yahodah, the Yadim, until Yahweh, until the obedience of the nations is his obedience. Obedience of the nations is not given to Yeshua now. Only the house of Yahweh. Of course, he's high priest over the house of Yahweh. So all four of these religions, now back to Revelations 4, all four of these religions, these agencies, are following Yahodah. Who follows who? We'll see that in just a minute, but look back to verse 7 now. 4 and verse 7. 4 and verse 7. Yahodah is the leaders, but as you just saw now, keep that in mind. Yahodah is the leader. Yeshua's coming rulership is after the sun is darkened. That's and the earth is burned. That's what Yeshua shown. Let's finish reading this chapter 4, Revelation chapter 4 and verse 7. So you have liking unto a lion. Then the second characteristic is like a calf. We'll get into that later. That shows God worship. And the third characteristic had a face of a man. So it's man's face that he has adopted from Satan himself. The number 4 was likened unto a flying eagle. Flying, no man has ever flown before until this generation. Well, let's look back to verse 7 again. Creatures, they're all like lions, these 4, and the second characteristic they have, all of them are alike now in this. Get this, please. The second characteristic is like a calf. like a keg. Turn to Matthew. Just keep that in mind. We'll get to it. But look at Matthew 24. Matthew 24. Now this is speaking, of course, of Yeshua's coming. Matthew 24, verse 29. Immediately but after the tribulation of those days. Immediately but after. It's not going to come before. Immediately but after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. So this is going to take place, the last part. That's when the United States is going to get hit the hardest too. I told you over and over, the scriptures show the United States is going to be strong up until the very end because we have a message to preach from here. That's the reason. Those days will be, the sun be darkened, and the moon will not give her light. The stars will fall from heaven. Stars are going to be falling from heaven because the powers of the heavens will be shaken also. Yes, mankind, this is the face of man now that you see on all of these. The fiery flying eagle too. And verse 30, Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then will all the tribes of the earth mourn that are left alive. And they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Then, so he gives you the time period here. Now look over to the book of Hebrews. Here is Yeshua now. He's qualified to be the high priest over the house of Yahweh. He's qualified to take over the nations who submit. But Yahweh has got to make his enemies right now, they're all his enemies, and he's got to bring a certain portion of them to be worshipers of Yeshua himself. In Hebrews 1, and look at verse 13. Verse 13. No, go back to verse 2. Has in these last days. Here you see the setup of Hebrews now, the book of Hebrews. Spoken to us through his Son. His Son, if you remember, chapter 4 of Revelation, is opening the seal. Opening the seals in these last days to the house of Yahweh. In the last days, spoken to us through his Son. He's speaking to his house right now, as we'll see later. Whom he has appointed heir of all things. He's appointed him heir. He hasn't taken it yet, but he's appointed heir of all things and will, with us, take over the whole universe. Start over. He's spoken to us through his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, for whom he also made the world. Now verse 3, who being the reflection of the perfection of Yahweh. This is how he qualified for this position. This is how you're going to qualify for this position. Guard yourself. Get ready. Be tested. I told you a while ago, Yashub, Eob, Job, as the King James Version calls it, he didn't understand that he was put on trial. He is being put on trial for heaven to see, to convince heaven, to convince Satan and her sons. But there was more people, there's a lot more beings throughout this universe than Satan and her sons. And they're all having wars and fighting. Eob knew that he had lived a perfect life. He just couldn't understand why all of his hopes and dreams were taken away from him. And now he says, it looks like the grave is going to be my father and worms are going to be my mother, and I'll be nothing. I'll disappear. That's the last of me. Now hold your place right there. You got to get this in your mind. Turn over to Deuteronomy. And of course Yahweh showed him what he was doing at last, but that he was actually using Yahshub and showing that he is going to turn this, what they call the Leviathan, around with mankind. He's going to use mankind for this. And Yeshua had to be born of man to fit this, because the heavenly beings, none of them qualified, including Lucifer's sons. They did not qualify to fit this position. The position here, to qualify for it, you just read it. He had to be perfectly righteous. He had to love righteousness. Here in Deuteronomy 30 and verse 15, he says, "See, I've set before you this day life by righteousness, death and destruction also is set before you. In that I command you this day to love Yahweh your Father, his sons, and Lucifer. They equally hold hatred for Yahweh." He says, by walking. How do you love Yahweh? Notice how he tells you to do it. By walking in his ways. Isaiah 58 says, keep the Sabbath. Keep the Sabbath the way it's instituted to be kept. And then you will find joy in Yahweh. He's saying here, love Yahweh, learn to love Yahweh by walking in all of his ways, keeping his laws. That's what you're practicing here today, right now. You're actually practicing this righteousness, practicing loving Yahweh. His statutes, his judgments, so that you may live. So you may live. And multiply and take over the universe. That's what the purpose for mankind. But if your heart turns away and you are not obedient, you are drawn away to submit to gods. Submit to gods, that's breaking the laws of Yahweh. 1 Yochanan 3, verses 4, 7, and 10. 7, 8, and 10. If you submit to gods by practicing sin, someone said, well, what the elders was scolding me about wasn't sin. I didn't commit any sin. I said, did you disobey the elders in some way? Well, they told me to do this. Did you do it? No. I said, that's sin. Yahweh tells you to go to the judges, the counselors. They're called counselors here now. Go to the judges who Yahweh sets over you and do what they tell you to do. If you don't do it, you're a rebellion. It's rebelling against the one sent, against the ones he puts over you. It's like spitting in the face of Yeshua because you don't like what the 12th disciple said. Learn to obey. If you think you're doing wrong by obeying, come see me. You need me to talk to you. So if you submit to gods, Genesis 3, verse 5, the ways of the gods are more desirable. The ways of the gods, is rebellion. Go in your own way. As the Pope says, no restrictions, as the word Catholic means. It means universal, no restrictions. Do whatever you want to do. Elohim, to worship them by serving them, by committing sin, as Romans 6:16, I believe it is, says, you belong to whom you obey, of sin unto death or obedience unto righteousness. Verse 18, Deuteronomy 30 and verse 18, I declare to you this day that you will surely perish. That's the same thing he told Adam and Eve. He said, if you partake of this, dying, you will die. And then there's a second death after that, of which there is no resurrection. But I declare to you this day, you will surely perish. You will not prolong your days. You'll not have eternal life, is what he's saying. Verse 19, Now here's the clincher that Eob didn't know about. Eob didn't know that he was put on trial in a heavenly court on a day when they were having trials, and Yahweh is trying to convince the heavens that he has a plan that will bring peace to the planets, not just the nations, but to the planets. So he puts Eob on trial, and Satan says, oh, sure, but let me test him. And I'll show you what a wreck this man is, what human beings, what mankind is like. I'll show you what the real mankind is like. Let me get to him and test him. Well, Yahweh didn't warn Yahshub of this. He didn't say, I'm going to let you be tested here by Satan so all heavens can see. But he did put him on this trial. Satan and her sons were available at that trial. That's part of the principalities and powers that we see spoken of throughout the Scriptures. These principalities, the estates that Yahweh assigned them to. Remember that. The estates that Yahweh assigned. Offices to govern the planets, to keep war from ever occurring, to keep peace there. And they left them and went out and found something more exciting to do. Like driving around, sitting in the mall, crazy, creating dinosaurs. I call heaven and earth now to witness against you, Yahshub, Eob, Melchizedek, you want me to call a few names over here? I call heaven and earth to witness what you're doing. Prove righteousness to heaven and earth. And that's what we're doing in practicing Yahweh's law. He didn't tell Eob that, but that's what you see in this trial that took place. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day that I've set before you life and death. I haven't held nothing back. Blessings and curses. I've set all of this before you. Therefore, show heaven that you choose life, not death. So both you and your children may live. You see that? So you may love Yahweh, your Father, by listening to Him and obeying Him. Hold fast to Him, for He is your life. Let's go back to Hebrews again. Hebrews 1 and verse 3. Who being the reflection of Yahweh. This is talking about Yahshua, the Lamb that's opening the seals now for the house of Yahweh. Who being the reflection of the perfection of Yahweh and the representation of Yahweh's plan, the plan. Now get this, because that's part of His plan, was to prove Eob was trustworthy. No matter how much pressure, no matter what they put on him. Even to the peak that he thought he was dying. But he never turned from his righteousness. By upholding all things concerning that which was spoken by Yahweh through the laws and the prophets, when He had purged sin, that is, He died for your sins, so that you might repent and be converted, so the blood of Yahweh would cover your sins. Repent, yes. Be converted, yes, please. Don't just keep sinning. Make up your mind you're going to overcome this thing. Set it in your mind. So He sat down at the right hand of Yahweh on high. Now this is a representation, Yahshua, And he sat down by Yahweh at the right hand of Yahweh. He's a representation of Yahweh, representing Yahweh in all that he says and does, Yahweh through his laws and the prophets. When he had purged all sin, he sat down at the right hand of Yahweh. Now look at 13. But to which of the Malachim, which of the sons of Yahweh that you see in Eob, which of the sons of Yahweh who have come with their mother to this trial, this hearing that's going on in heaven, to which of them has he said at any time, sit at my right hand? He hasn't. In fact, they've all proved themselves unfit for what Yahweh is wanting out of mankind. But they knew the plan of Yahweh to create mankind and bring forth a person like Yahweh. Now, you see that right there? Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Well, he's sitting, that word sit means judge, of course, and he's judge, Hebrews 10:21, over the house of Yahweh. He's judging you right now. You may be put on trial. You have been put on trial. All the days that I've known you, you've been put on trial. Okay, to which of these sons of Yahweh? None. None of the sons of Yahweh. Hold your place there and go to Eob right quick. The first chapter of Eob. First chapter. Hold your place now in Hebrews. Too late? Okay. Eob 1, verse 1, this man is perfect. Second line, this man is perfect. He reverences Yahweh and shuns evil. He shuns the evil of the gods, that all the gods practice. There is not one God that is mentioned in the Bible, that is mentioned in the Holy Scriptures. Not one God has ever been righteous. Yahweh is a being. Doesn't represent himself as being a God. A God uses force, as Yeshua said. They force their way, and they rule. Like Nimrod is a god. That's the god of the world. That famous school. Okay, he reverences Yahweh, and look on down to verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of Yahweh came. Yeah, they got a summons in the mail. Put it that way. Maybe you'll understand it. They got a summons to appear in court on a certain day, and they came to present themselves in court. And what was brought out at this court trial was Eob himself. Eob didn't know it. That's the one thing he didn't understand about what was going on. You know it now. You know that you're on trial the same as Eob. You're either going to represent Yahweh or you're going to represent Satan, one of the two. Now there was a day when the sons of Yahweh came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan came among them, in the midst of them. She was the one that brought all the railing accusations. She was their number one witness in heaven. And Yahweh had said, okay, proving to heaven and earth, we will go your way. Look at Genesis 3 verse 1. Here is Satan and her sons and their characters put here in the 3rd chapter of Genesis for you. This is Satan and her sons, the same ones that presented themselves in the court trial, who were summoned to testify in court. Yes, Yahweh says that he sits among the gods. And he says you should be doing this and this and this. He tells them what they should do, but they're not doing it. So creating mankind to be like Yahweh, they will do what Yahweh tells them to do. Well, Genesis 3 and verse 5, 2 and verse 9, you see the two trees. You see the Coptic Catholic, the sons of Yahaqob, the heads of Yahaqob. You see that tree. It brings forth, it don't bring life. It brings death. And then you see the tree of righteousness also. That's, of course, Yeshua. And Satan then, in chapter 3, it shows Satan and her sons now. You get this in verse 5. The serpent, verse 4, the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die." He tells her this lie. Of course, dying you will die, and that's what the world is doing. And of course, the final death comes at the end of the millennium. A 100-year judgment period that we will see. For he knows that, verse 5, he knows that in the day that you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like my sons. You'll be like my sons. Well, which of your sons has Yahweh said, "This day have I begotten you"? Which one of them did he say this to? They weren't qualified to fit that position, as Hebrews said. But you'll be like my sons if you will follow this evil. Evil like my sons. It's more desirable, is what she said. Well, not in the long run, and we can see this now in refugee camps. We got one down here for all to visit, by the way. Now, in Genesis 3:5, remember what you saw there. Turn over to 2nd Kepha now. 2nd Kepha. And remember the words in Hebrew. Which of Halil's sons did Yahweh ever say this to? He hasn't. But to mankind, he has said it. To mankind, Eob, Yahweh said he's perfect. He will have his part in the kingdom. Daniel said, no, it wasn't Daniel, but one of the prophets said there's a time of trouble coming, bad time of trouble coming, and if Daniel or Eob and someone else he named there, there you go, if they were there with their righteousness and no one else was like them, only they are going to be saved. He won't spare his own original sons. No, he won't spare mankind either. No one but the righteous is going to, no one but those who practice righteousness is going to be qualified as righteous and enter into Yahweh's eternal kingdom. Now that's what he's showing. 2nd Kepha 2. And notice verse 4. 2nd Kepha 2, verse 4. Let's look back to verse 3. And in their covetousness, they will exploit you with framed, fashioned, made-up words, propaganda. As Malachi Martin says, the Vatican is great at it. They practice it. Their condemnation will not linger, and their destruction will not slumber. Now, verse 4. For if Yahweh did not spare his sons, if he did not spare his own sons who sinned, this is the Malachim. The word is translated there, Malachim. It's actually Satan's sons and those who are like Satan's sons, both heavenly beings and, of course, mankind. If he did not spare the Malachim, Satan's sons, if you sin, you belong to Satan. Whether you're mankind or whether you're her original sons that she appeared in court to defend. For if Yahweh did not, in that court trial, now, you get bits and pieces of it throughout the Holy Scripture. And if you'll start looking for this, keep this in mind, you will see that these beings are suffering. And the planets are suffering. There's no telling how many planets there was that have been destroyed because of the wars that has taken place in heaven. Our NASA knows and sees this. And I remember reading articles and bringing it out in a prophetic word and so forth about this, that NASA could see these wars, and they say there's war in the heaven. And of course, with our strong telescopes, we can see some of this taking place. But verse 4, 2 Kepha 2, verse 4, for if Yahweh did not spare his own sons who sinned, but will cast them into abyss. This is not a hole in the ground. This is a state of being to where they can only allowed to go so far and stop. It's that kind of a restriction set upon them. Cast them into this restricted state of being, delivering them into chains of darkness. Chains of darkness. See, that's confusion, or not confusion, but not being able to find their way out, to be reserved for judgment. I'm out of time, I know, but let's look at one more scripture. No, I'd have to get two more to get to that one. Well, Yahodah. Okay, we'll go two more then. And cast them into this abyss where they're restrained for reserve. They're actually reserved. They're being used at this time to tempt and try to lead you astray. They're being used for that purpose as a trial that the heavens can see and the earth can see. What you're doing. As you gain power, they're going to see this more. But I want you to turn over right quickly now to Yahodah, just before Revelations. Yahodah, and 1. Yahodah. Yahodah holds the throne, holds the ruling power. We'll look at 1 and verse 6. And the Malachim, who did not keep their first estate, this is the principalities, the powers that the apostles talked about. It gets really deep and it's a long lesson, but they were given. Now, Yahweh's sons were given rulership over certain planets or certain governments within a planet. He has the governments that he has. If you would look at what was given to Moshe, this was the same type government that Yahweh was instituting among the heavenly beings. And of course, they left it. They didn't care about it. They didn't take care of it. They probably turned it over to somebody else and took off. They left this authority that they had in keeping and watching and keeping, as Yahweh describes it with Adam and Eve, to watch and keep. That is the same thing that his sons had charge of. These were high positions that Satan's sons had in the kingdom. Very high positions. But they wanted other things. One of the things they wanted to do is see blood, see fighting, see horror. And they did. And they ruined the very earth that and Yahweh had it in his plan, even at that time, knowing that this creation that he had already started in progress was not doing it, but he knew that he could save this creation, and he knew that he had to have a history to do so, that the people would follow or the beings would follow. So he had this plan in the beginning to bring forth mankind. And mankind he had And he's calculated it out. He knows what he can do. And Yahshua said, mankind alone cannot reveal this to you, Kepha, but my Father in heaven is working with you. And of course, he shows that with each one here. No one can come unto me unless the Spirit of the Father draw him. Then Yahweh will raise you up. That's what Yahshua's words were. Well, here he says in Yahodah 1 verse 6, the Malachim who did not keep their first estate, but left their own habitation, their own house, the house of Yahweh. They left it. You see that? Habitation. It means house. It means house of Yahweh. They were Yahweh's sons. And they left the house of Yahweh. They could have had this. They could have. But Yahweh saw that he couldn't build this character in these beings like he can build in mankind. And that's the reason his plan included mankind. A lesser being, we're lesser in power than they, much lower than the sons of Yahweh, much lower, as the Hebrews said. And yet Yahweh is he's put within us the subconscious mind that there's no limit on knowledge. No limit. He's putting the wisdom in us to govern that knowledge, showing us what's taking place on earth, showing heaven what is taking place on earth. We're seeing it right now in the Middle East, around the great river Euphrates. That's where Yahweh limited these wars for a certain time. No, they're not going to blow up the United States until this last portion of prophecy takes place. That's when the United States is going to get hit. If Yahweh allowed this to take place any sooner, we wouldn't be reaching all nations. We've got to reach these nations. And we're doing it through the powers given the United States and the technology. So the Malachim left the house of Yahweh. He has reserved in everlasting chains, that limiting their abilities and minds where they can't go any further, under this darkness, that they're held back until the judgment of the great day. Now, of course, that judgment is shown in Revelations 20, and we'll get to that tomorrow now. And we got a lot of stuff to bring out tomorrow, so don't miss it. And I asked them to move the services up a little to give me a little more time, and we'll have it that same time in the morning. Services will start at 8:45, right? 8:45, and then about same time as I started this morning, Yahweh willing, I'll get to start tomorrow morning, and we'll try to cover. If I get to speak tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow afternoon maybe, get you some sleep. Go to bed early tonight and get you some sleep so you can get up early. Then we'll try to take a break after dinner tomorrow and for a little while where you can rest up a little and then come back. And I would like to finish this subject that I'm on tomorrow, if at all possible, because we're getting too close to the end of this 2016. Be ready to take notes on what the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins is bringing tomorrow on 2016. That and some other things, but at 2016, brethren, I think you got about 2 months left. It may come sooner than that now. We haven't found a date for sure yet. But they're pushing at the bits right now, straining at the bits. I don't know how many is a horse rider or a horse driver, but straining at the bits means that horse is wanting to go and he's pushing his head out and the bits out and wanting to go, and you're holding him back. But the nations are doing the same thing. They're wanting to go to war. and the Vatican is setting them up for it. They're creating this hatred for the Muslims. I told you the Muslims have a little righteousness, and they hate all righteousness. Remember, you heads of Yahaqob who hate righteousness, that there's a hatred for it. There was one of the translators of the Bible that the Pope actually, at that time, he hated that man so he had his bones dug up and burned and sprinkled out over the ocean. Well, I got news for him. I'm still going to resurrect that man. We are. You and I. We're going to resurrect him and give him a chance, because the man was actually doing a service for us in getting the Bible translated and out to the ends of the earth. Out to the ends of the earth, where Yahweh could, through a woman and a husband, bring me up in a safe, dried-up land, God-forsaken land. They always called it, everybody called it that. This is a God-forsaken land. I could get out of it. Well, why don't you go? The roads are there. All my kinfolks left, or just about all of them, but almost everybody left Oklahoma. And that's where I was trained in righteousness by lamplight. Born in 1934. Yahweh shows I was conceived in 33, by the way, and these numbers, they're that important. So be here and listen and be ready to take your notes. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next leader. I love you.